Rich Dads Before You Quit Your Job, 10 Real-Life Lessons Every Entrepreneur Should Know About Building a Multi-Million-Dollar Business by Robert T. Kiyosaki. It was each man's personal philosophy on the subject of mistakes that determined his ultimate success in life. His first big failure. In earlier books, I talked about coming home from the Vietnam War and having to decide in which dad's footsteps I would follow. I was about 25 at the time, and both my dads were just turning 50. My poor dad had just lost his bid as the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor of the state of Hawaii. Since he ran for office against his boss, the governor, my dad was informed that he would never work in state government again. So he was unemployed and out of work at the age of 50. The problem was, all he knew was the world of education. He entered the academic world at the age of 5 and did not leave that world until the age of 50. Out of work, he had to take early retirement. He took his retirement money, entered the world of business as a reluctant entrepreneur, and purchased a big-name ice cream franchise. He purchased this big-name franchise because he thought it was a cannot-fail business. In less than 2 years, the cannot-fail franchise failed, and my father was once again out of work and now out of money. Blaming instead of learning. My poor dad was angry, depressed, upset, and blaming the franchisor as well as his partners for the failure of the business and the loss of his money. It was during this period that I understood why my rich dad stressed the importance of stopping, thinking, learning, and correcting. It was obvious from my dad's mental and emotional state of mind that he had gone through many stop signs and was blaming instead of learning. He was continuing to think with the mental capacity of an employee, not an entrepreneur. Within just a few months of opening his ice cream business, my dad knew it was in trouble. Once friends stopped coming by to buy a cone, the store was virtually empty. My dad would sit there for hours, all by himself, without customers. Instead of taking a moment to stop, think, and ask for guidance, he fired his employees to reduce costs, worked longer and harder in the business, fought with his partners, and then spent the remainder of his money by hiring an attorney to go after the franchisor. In other words, he used up his money blaming the franchisor for his problems. Out of money, the business finally closed. It was obvious that my real dad had taken bad luck and turned it into more bad luck. Instead of stopping, learning, and correcting, he could not admit that he might be making mistakes. Instead of making things better, he made matters worse. With his political campaign loss and the loss of his first and only business, he remained angry and defeated until he died, nearly 20 years later. That is why this lesson on mistakes, bad luck, and being dumb and dumber yet getting richer and richer is so important to me. Show me a happy loser. I once heard Vince Lombardi, the famous coach of the Green Bay Packers professional football team, say, "Show me a happy loser, and I will show you a loser." Over the years, I have taken the time to look deeper into the multiple meanings of that statement. On the surface, Vince Lombardi's words seemed to mean that people who take losing lightly are losers. I have been that happy loser many times in life, saying such things as, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Winning is not that important to me. It's how I played the game that matters." On the surface, I may have appeared nonchalant or happy about losing, but truthfully, deep down inside, I hated losing. In other words, when I pretended to be okay about losing, I was lying to myself. The more I thought about Lombardi's quotation, the more meanings came to the surface. Some of the other things he might have meant are, nobody likes to lose. Losing is not something we look forward to. Losing should inspire winning. Some people avoid losing at all costs because it is so painful. In my opinion, it is the third meaning that caused my poor dad's business failure. For years, he operated in a world where losing, making mistakes, and failing were to be avoided at all costs. As an employee, he was used to and wanted his steady paychecks and guaranteed benefits. To many workers like my dad, security is far more important than opportunity. That is why so many employees, as a personal philosophy, will avoid making mistakes at all costs. One of the reasons my dad failed was simply because he had avoided making mistakes for too long. High-speed learning. In March 2005, my wife Kim and I signed up to take Bob Bondurant's 4-day Formula One racing school, located in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't ask us why we signed up for it. We just did simply because it sounded fun and exciting. We are not professional race car drivers and have no intention of becoming professional race car drivers. All my life, I loved movies about Grand Prix races and Formula car racing. I envied Paul Newman and his hobby of auto racing. Starting with my very first car, a 1969 Datsun 2000, I have almost always owned high-performance street cars. After the Datsun, I purchased a Corvette, several Porsches, and a Ferrari. My problem has always been that the cars had more power than I had talent. That problem was one of the reasons why Kim, who also owns a very fast Porsche, and I decided once and for all to learn to drive race cars on a racetrack. From day one of the class, we realized that we had made a mistake. There were two classes. One class was for high-performance driving. This is the class we should have been in. In that class were everyday people who simply wanted to learn to drive regular cars at high speed. The second class was titled Grand Prix Driving, which is the class Kim and I were in. In this class were professional race car drivers and amateur drivers with years of racing experience. Kim and I did not realize we were in the wrong class until we noticed that the high-performance class was driving high-performance Cadillacs, while we were in the Grand Prix class driving high-performance Corvettes. The thought of asking for a transfer crossed our minds, but we decided hanging out with professional drivers might be a great way to learn a lot faster. But a knot formed in my stomach once we decided to stay with our class. I knew I was about to face some of my greatest fears. On the morning of the second day, the knot in my stomach was worse. My logical mind was chattering away, trying to find a way to quit gracefully. In the classroom, my instructor came up to me and kindly said, "You're driving too slowly. You need to drive much faster." At that moment, I was ready to quit, and I would have, except the instructor then said, "Your wife Kim is catching on. She's driving much faster than you are." Immediately, my male pride kicked in, logic went out the window, and I had no choice. If Kim was driving faster than me, I had to stay. As a side note, Kim was the only woman in our class of 12 people. She was very excited about passing men. Burn out the fear. For 3 full days, the knot in my stomach grew worse as speeds kept increasing, turns came faster, and my mind went into sensory overload with all I had to learn and do at high speeds. At lunch on the third day, I finally asked my instructor why he kept insisting I increase my speed. After all, I wanted to drive slowly so I could learn the lessons before adding speed. He smiled and said, "I want you to go fast because speed will burn that fear out of you. Your fear keeps you stuck. You get up to your fear and then back off of the throttle. Your fear is still driving the car. That is why, when you get up to that fear, I want you to go full throttle." Again, I wanted to quit. Again, I was being told I was not going fast enough. Again, I thought that the way to learn was to practice at slow speeds, not fast speeds. Look, said Les, my instructor, you have to trust that there is a Grand Prix driver inside you. If you don't go fast, you'll never meet the driver inside you. I want you to push yourself. Push that throttle so the driver in you comes forward and takes over the car. If I let you go slowly, the coward in you is still driving the car. There is only one way the professional driver can come out, and that is by pushing hard on the accelerator. When you go to full throttle, you have to trust that the professional race car driver in you will take over. On the fourth day, the knot in my gut was even worse, and my mind was coming up with every reason why I did not have to do this course. The fourth day is when the class stops driving the Corvette and gets into Formula One open-wheeled racers. On this day, we had red jumpsuits and helmets on. Being overweight, I had trouble sliding down into the car. It felt like I was sliding into a coffin. I couldn't move. Again, the coward in me almost took over. I wanted to quit. I could hear my mind saying, "You don't need to do this. You don't have anything to prove. You'll never be a race car driver. Why are you doing this? This is nuts." In less than an hour, I was happier than I have been in years. I was at home in the car. Suddenly, all 3 days of lessons, fears, and frustrations clicked, and I was driving the car at full throttle. Instead of fear, it was exhilaration. The driver in me had pushed the coward aside and taken over the car. As we left the class late that afternoon high as kites, one of the students who was in the high-performance sedan driving course instead of the Formula One racing class we were in came over to us and said, "I loved the class I was in, but I really wish I was in your class." I replied, "That's funny, because up until today, I was wishing I was in your class." Two different worlds. The reason I mentioned the driving school is not to brag about my new driving skills. I mention it because the school is about a process very similar to an employee becoming an entrepreneur, a process of going from one world to another. One of the first lessons I learned is that what I need to do on the streets and highways is opposite to what I have to do on the racetrack. For example, on the highway, if you see a wreck directly in front of you, most people step on their brakes. In the driving school, we were taught to step on the throttle. In the real world, when a car begins to skid, most people step on their brakes. In driving school, we have to know when to step on the brake and when to step on the throttle. In other words, with different skids, there are different responses. Trust me, stepping on the brake is easy. Stepping on the throttle in a skid is hard. It goes against everything I know. In order to do it, I definitely needed to increase my mental and physical capacity. In the normal world of driving, most people are asked to drive at or below the speed limit. In driving school, we were taught to step on the throttle and go beyond our personal limits to speed. Speed and fear definitely increased my capacity. A great curriculum. My 4 days at the Bob Bondurant High Performance Racing School were 4 days of the steepest learning curve I have ever gone through in my life. The learning curves at the racing school were even steeper than the learning curves I went through at the Navy Flight School. Obviously, Bob Bondurant is not only a great Formula One driver, he is also a wonderful teacher. As a fellow teacher, even though terrified most of the time, I did spend a lot of time evaluating his teaching methodology. I was impressed with the curriculum in the classroom and on the track. For 4 days, he and his instructors kept us going through our fears as well as our mental and physical limitations with a high degree of safety. Once on the track, I did not have much concern for my physical well-being. The primary concern I had was my wife Kim passing me at higher speeds, which she did on several occasions. Physically, I was fine, but my ego was severely bruised each time her car flew past mine. The entrepreneurial process. The process of going from street driver to racetrack driver required that I unlearn many things. In other words, the right things to do on the street will get you killed on the racetrack. Also, the smart thing to do on the street, such as slow down, is often the stupid thing to do on the racetrack. The same is true with going from employee to entrepreneur. They are two different worlds, and what is right in one world is wrong in the other. The reason I tell the story of my poor dad's transition from the world of government to the world of entrepreneurship is to illustrate this point, that what he did right in the world of government was wrong in the world of entrepreneurship. Since a new entrepreneur is creating something out of nothing, it is obvious that mistakes will be made. In order to succeed, a new entrepreneur needs to be committed to going through these steps as quickly as possible. 1. Start the business. 2. Fail and learn. 3. Find a mentor. 4. Fail and learn. 5. Take some classes. 6. Keep failing and learning. 7. Stop when successful. 8. Celebrate. 9. Count your money, the wins and the losses. 10. Repeat the process. The dreaded disease. In my estimation, 90% of wannabe entrepreneurs do not get to step 1. They may have a plan. They may have created the perfect business in their head or on paper, but that dreaded disease, known as analysis paralysis, infects them. Instead of going forward, I have seen many wannabe entrepreneurs design and redesign their plan, or they find some excuse why the time or the plan is not right. Instead of taking action and failing, they work hard at trying not to fail. They enter the world of analysis paralysis. It is impossible to become an entrepreneur without starting a business. It would be like trying to learn how to ride a bicycle without a bicycle, or wanting to learn to be a race car driver without a race car and a track. My rich dad said, "The main reason to start a business is to have a business to practice on. If you do not have a bicycle to practice on, how can you learn to ride a bike? If you do not have a business to practice on, how can you learn to be an entrepreneur?" Different schools of thought. At the Bondurant High Performance Driving School, the course curriculum did not focus on doing things right. The course focused on making driving mistakes at higher and higher speeds. As our ability to make mistakes and to correct them at high speeds increased, our confidence went up. On the 4th day of the course, I could make a horrible mistake at high speed, lose control of the car in a turn, regain control, get the car back on the track, get back to full throttle, and continue the race. If I had attempted that on the first day, I would probably be in the hospital. Once again, I mentioned this driving school because it reflects a contrast in different schools of thought. My poor dad came from the school of thought that focused on the avoidance of mistakes. That is why he was a good employee. My rich dad came from the school of thought that encouraged making mistakes. That is why he was a good entrepreneur. Dumb and Dumber. This chapter is entitled Dumb and Dumber, Get Rich and Richer, as a tribute to Jim Carrey. For those of you who have ever watched a Jim Carrey movie, you may have noticed that the dumber he is on screen, the richer he becomes. The same is true with entrepreneurship. If you are a person who needs to always look good, sound smart, never make mistakes, and have all the right answers, then being an employee or a self-employed person might be a better path for you. When I first started out, I looked like the biggest clown in town. My businesses would go up and come crashing down. Soon, my reputation as an entrepreneur in the business community of Honolulu was laughable. If not for my rich dad guiding me and encouraging me to learn from my mistakes and go out and make more, I might have quit my process. I found it painful to play Jim Carrey's screen characters in real life. Yet, as the years went on, the mistakes were bigger but not as painful, simply because I was becoming an expert at making mistakes. Instead of running through 5 or 6 stop signs, I did stop, think, learn, correct, and expand my capacity as an entrepreneur before going on. Today, I can honestly say I am richer than many of my peers, many who did well in school or had higher paying jobs early in life, simply because I was willing to be dumb and dumber for years. That's part of paying the price to succeed. Turning bad luck into good luck. When we were just entering high school, Rich Dad taught his son and me how to turn bad luck into good luck. At the time, both Mike and I were sinking fast in our sophomore year of high school because we were flunking English. Mike and I were not great writers. Instead of being upset with us, Rich Dad said, "Let this setback in school make you stronger, not weaker. If you can turn this bad experience into a good experience, you will be further ahead of your classmates who passed the course." "But we both have F's on our report card," Mike protested. "That record travels with us all the way through college." "Yes, the grade travels with you, but so does the lesson in life. In the long run, this lesson in life can be far more important than your grades if you take this bad incident and turn it into a good incident." Mike and I were really angry with our English teacher. We were depressed and felt like failures. Looking at us, Rich Dad chuckled and said, "Your teacher is winning. You guys are losing because you're acting like losers." "What can we do?" I asked. "He's got the power. He's already flunked us, and the whole school knows it." "He only has the power to flunk you," smiled Rich Dad. "You have the power to take your anger and do something even more stupid, like slash the tires on his car, which I suspect has crossed your minds, or do something good, like take your anger and do well in school or do well in football or in surfing. Take your anger and turn it into greatness. Then you will win. If you take your anger and slash the tires on his car, you will take a bad situation and make it worse. You'll probably spend time in jail if you do what you are thinking." The power of emotions. That day, Rich Dad taught us as humans we have 4 basic emotions. They are 1. Joy, 2. Anger, 3. Fear, 4. Love. He also explained that there were many other emotions, but these were the basic ones. Many of the other emotions were combinations of 2 or more of these basic emotions. For example, sadness is often a combination of anger, fear, and love, and occasionally joy. He then taught us that each emotion can be used in 2 basic ways, for good or for bad. For example, I could feel joy and use the joy to go out and drink heavily, which would be using the emotion of joy for a bad purpose. I could also use the emotion of joy and send thank you notes to everyone who helped me in life. The same is true with all 4 basic emotions, even love. Today, I still do not like my English teacher, yet I am grateful that he flunked me. If not for that F, I might not have studied harder to get through college, and I might never have become an international best-selling author. In other words, that F at the age of 15, combined with my first business failure at the age of 9, has made me a millionaire over and over again. Best of all, not only did I learn many lessons about life and myself, but I learned to turn my anger into joy. And I learned that being dumb and dumber can make me become richer and happier. And that is one of the steps in turning bad luck into good luck. As Rich Dad said, if you can turn bad luck into good luck, you will be twice as lucky in love, life, health, and money. Rich Dad's entrepreneurial lesson number 3. Know the difference between your job and your work. Chapter 3. Why work for free? The difference between work and a job. Do you know the difference between your job and your work? Asked Rich Dad one day. Puzzled, I asked, aren't they the same thing? Isn't a job the same as work? Rich Dad shook his head and said, if you want to be successful in life, you need to know the difference. What's the big deal? Asked Mike as he and I shrugged our shoulders and waited for the lesson we knew was coming, whether we wanted it or not. What does your dad always say to you about getting a job? Asked Rich Dad. Thinking for a moment, I replied, he says things like, go to school and work hard so you can get a good job. Does he say, do your homework so you can get a good job? Yeah, I replied, he does say things like that. So what is the difference between your job and your work? Asked Rich Dad again. I don't know, I replied. It all sounds like work to me. Oh, I get what you're saying, said Mike. A job is something I get paid for. I do not get paid for work, such as my homework. Work is what I do to prepare me for my job. Rich Dad nodded. That's it. That's the difference between your work and your job. You get paid for a job, but you do not get paid for doing your work. Looking at me, he asked, do you get paid for doing yard work at home, or does your mom get paid for doing her housework? No, I replied. Not in my family. I don't even get an allowance. Do you get paid to do your homework? Asked Rich Dad. Does your dad give you money to read books? No, I replied a little sarcastically. Are you saying that my homework is what prepares me for my job? That is what I am saying, Rich Dad smiled. When it comes to money, the more homework you do, the more money you earn on your job. People who do not do their homework make less money, regardless if they are an employee or an entrepreneur. Thinking for a long while, I finally asked, so is it true that if I do not do my homework at school, I won't get a high-paying job? Yes, I would say that is true, said Rich Dad. At least, if you don't do your homework, you will not become a medical doctor, accountant, or lawyer. If you are an employee, it's tough to get promoted and earn more money if you don't have a trained skill or a college degree. And if we want to be entrepreneurs, we need to do a different type of homework? I asked. Rich Dad nodded and said, many entrepreneurs quit their job without doing their homework. That is why so many small businesses fail or struggle financially. So you're having us do our homework to become entrepreneurs. Exactly, Rich Dad said, and that is why I am not paying you. Working for me for free is doing your homework. Many employees do not understand working for free. They expect to get paid for anything they do. That is why they fail. They continue to think like employees. They want that steady paycheck. Lots of work, but no jobs. In many poor parts of town, there is a lot of work to be done, but there are very few jobs, Rich Dad continued. Thinking for a moment, I finally repeated what he said. There is a lot of work, but no jobs? To me, it was puzzling, and I needed to think more about what he said. Why is that? Asked his son Mike. Well, one reason is that we are trained in school to look for jobs. If there are no jobs, people are out of work, even if there is a lot of work to do. When a factory closes or moves overseas, it usually leaves behind a lot of unemployed employees. Rich Dad continued to explain. Employees see no jobs, so they do nothing. On the other hand, an entrepreneur sees a lot of opportunity. The entrepreneur knows that the jobs will come if the work is done. So they need to be retrained. They need to do their homework, I added. That's the work that needs to be done. That is some of the work, said Rich Dad. Look, the point I am making is that too many people confuse work with their job. Too many people expect to get their job training for free. Even if a person has a job, too many employees expect their employers to provide them with training and pay them at the same time. They want the company to pay for their education? I asked. Being a teenager and not having worked in a big company, the idea of expecting to be paid for training was strange to me. Many people also expect the government to provide them with job training for free, added Rich Dad. And that is why you say they are poor people, said Mike. It's more than financial. It is a poor attitude toward the value of education, training, and preparing oneself to have a skill people will pay for. Rich Dad agreed. I've seen employees attending training classes while keeping one eye on their watch. At quitting time, they jump up and leave the class, even if the instructor has not finished the lesson. Or I've seen employees who are outside, smoking and gossiping, or drinking in the bar and watching sports on TV, or flirting with other workers rather than attending the class the employer is paying them to attend. That is why so many people do not get ahead in life financially. Too many won't learn anything, even if it is free or if they are paid to learn it. And that applies to both employees and entrepreneurs. Since I came from a family of government educators who believed in free education, I asked, would you explain a little further the relationship between work and jobs? Doctors worked for free. Sure, said Rich Dad. Medical doctors spend a lot of money and a lot of time learning to be doctors before they get paid as a medical doctor. That is one reason why they earn more money than most people. Doctors do their homework before they get paid, Mike added. Professional athletes work for free. They certainly did, said Rich Dad, but also look at great athletes who earn a lot of money. I do not know of a single great athlete who got paid for practicing their sport. Most professional athletes started young and practiced longer and harder than the average athlete. Most professional athletes practiced for years and put in many hours long before they got paid. They had to do their homework before they got their jobs as pros. That is why you don't pay us, I said softly. We work for you for free. Rich Dad smiled. Even the Beatles worked for free before they became world famous and rich. Like the medical doctor or professional, they paid their dues. They did their homework. They did not ask for a guaranteed record contract, a steady paycheck, or medical benefits before they began practicing. I've bought a lot of their records, said Mike. I've helped make them rich. They made themselves rich, said Rich Dad with a smile. Doing your homework applies to more than just money. It also applies to your health. Many people are unhealthy because they do not work out. They don't exercise, I said, so they have poor health. Notice the word poor? Asked Rich Dad. Poor financially and poor in health. People who are lazy and lack discipline are often the people with the worst health and the worst wealth. So we need to do our homework if we want to become entrepreneurs, I summarized. That is why you boys have been working for me for free for all these years. You've been doing your homework to become entrepreneurs. If I were training you to be employees, I would be paying you by the hour. So that is why my dad, a government school teacher, got so angry when I worked for you for free, I added. Chuckling and nodding again, Rich Dad said, Your father thinks like an employee. That is why he thinks I should pay you. He does not understand working for free. He does not understand that you are receiving a priceless education. It's just not the kind of education he values. The type of education an employee needs is different from the type of education an entrepreneur requires. That is why he thinks you're cheating us, I added. I know, smiled Rich Dad. Look, years from now, you'll be a lot richer because of what I am teaching you. What you are learning is much more valuable than a small paycheck. Why a business struggles. Before quitting your job, you will need to find out how many different jobs make up a business. Rich Dad said, even if a person is a highly successful employee, let's say in sales, that does not mean he or she will be successful in business. The reason he said this was that selling is only one of many jobs required by a business. His other point was that a struggling business is a business where a job or several jobs are not being done at all or are not being done well. He said an entrepreneur may be working hard, but only working hard at one job at a time. That is why so many self-employed business owners struggle or eventually burn out from overwork. They may be working hard, but they may not be doing all the jobs a business requires. The basic jobs of a business. In the third book of the Rich Dad series, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, the BI triangle is introduced. The B and I refer to the business and investor quadrants of the cash flow quadrant. Rich Dad said to me, if you are going to be an entrepreneur or an investor, fully understanding the BI triangle is essential to your success. As a teenager, I did not really believe or appreciate Rich Dad's respect for the importance of the BI triangle. Today, I do. A great new product. Many times, individuals will say, I have an idea for a great new product. As you can tell from the BI triangle, the product is only the tip of the iceberg. Job descriptions for a successful business. You can think of the different aspects of a business as job descriptions. To be successful, the business needs someone with the skills to fulfill each of those functions. Starting with the product level, you will see the list of jobs required to bring the product to market. In simple terms, product, legal systems, communications, and cash flow are technically all the elements required for a business to function successfully. If one or more of these elements is missing or is being done poorly, the business will struggle and often will fail. When my poor dad's ice cream business began to fail, it was not because it was not selling a good ice cream product. In fact, it was a great ice cream product. In my opinion, the reason the business failed was that my dad was not a good sales or marketing person. He was a great communicator as a speaker, yet he failed to fill the job description known as communications. Taking my poor dad's ice cream lesson a little further, my dad did not realize that sales and marketing involve more than simply running advertising or being able to sell an extra scoop of ice cream to a customer. His problems began when he thought the brand of ice cream was all he needed for success. His problems began when he rented a cheap location in a remote shopping mall. His ice cream shop was located in an obscure corner of a so-so shopping mall. That meant he did not have foot traffic or car traffic passing in front of his shop. No one knew where his ice cream shop was. He thought the brand of the ice cream was strong enough to pull customers in. His business began failing before there even was a business. He almost made it. In retrospect, he did well when it came to choosing a good product. The legal work for the franchise was also done well. The system for making the ice cream was excellent. The franchisor made sure there was a good accounting package as part of the business, so the cash flow component was covered. There just wasn't enough cash to count. So my dad did a good job in covering 4 out of the 5 elements. He almost made it. Where my dad did a poor job was at the communications level of the BI triangle. He did not fully understand the intricacies of sales and marketing. When sales did not happen, the whole business began to fail. Instead of cutting his losses and purchasing a better location immediately, my dad did what many people do when sales decline and cash becomes tight. He cut back on staff. He cut back on advertising. He went cheaper instead of spending more money. When he did spend money, he spent it on legal bills, blaming the franchisor for his problem. Few things are a bigger waste of money than a lawsuit. Yet, that is what happens when people blame rather than learn. Instead of looking at his own actions and taking personal responsibility for the mistake, my dad insisted he was right. Eventually, he went broke. There is a poem that describes people who are willing to die being right. It goes, "Here lies the body of Justin Gray. He died defending his right of way. He is right, his case is strong, but he's as dead as if he were wrong." Every time I see people taking their sweet time in a crosswalk, expecting all cars to stop as they cross a busy street, I think of this poem. When I meet people who need to be right, who habitually blame other people when things go wrong, who would rather argue than listen, who know all the answers, or who think they are the center of the universe, I think of this poem. I also repeat this poem to myself whenever I become Justin Gray. The Triangle of Financial Success. The BI triangle applies to more than just the B and I quadrants. For example, if an employee is a receptionist for a business, a well-answered phone is the product of the job. In my opinion, the receptionist has one of the most important jobs in the company. If the receptionist does their job well, the company actually runs smoother. If the receptionist delivers a bad product, for example, by being rude over the phone, then their value to the company goes down. The receptionist should be counseled, retrained, or terminated. I am sure we have all experienced a rude receptionist at one time or another. The receptionist also has legal rights. If the company violates those rights, the receptionist can take action. The receptionist is an essential part of the entire business system. At home, the receptionist may be the leader of a system known as a home and a family. If life at home is happy, then chances are that the receptionist does a better job at work. If the systems at home are breaking down, such as no heat, no water, a leaky roof, or problem family members, the failing systems at home may affect the systems at work. Since the receptionist is an integral link in the communication of a business, if he or she has poor communication skills, once again, the entire business system suffers. Retraining or removal is essential. If the receptionist has loving communications at home, this reflects in the receptionist's life. If communications at home are abusive, it can greatly affect the job performance of the receptionist. Managing cash flow at home is very important. If the receptionist spends too much money, this not only affects life at home, but may also affect the receptionist's attitude at work. The number one reason for arguments in a marriage is money. Sadly, many divorces are caused by problems in the cash flow of the family. An entrepreneur's homework. Before quitting their jobs, entrepreneurs should do their homework. That means making sure that the BI Triangle's 5 components for their new business are covered. 1. Product. 2. Legal. 3. Systems. 4. Communications. 5. Cash flow. If the entrepreneur is weak in covering just one of the 5 elements, the business may fail, struggle financially, or fail to grow. That is why the lesson in the first chapter is, a successful business is created before there is a business. A simple checklist. A business is far more complex than this overly simplified list of 5 jobs. Nonetheless, this simple list has served me well over the years. I often use these 5 jobs as a checklist. Whenever a business begins to struggle, this list of 5 jobs can help analyze and identify where the problem or problems may lie. I have an idea for a new product. Whenever someone says, "I have an idea for a new product," this simple checklist can be used to bring some reality to what may be required to bring the product to market. In most instances, the wannabe entrepreneurs give up on their idea because they are not willing to do their homework. They soon realize why a new product is just the tip of the iceberg, or in this case, the tip of the BI triangle. Why they give up. One reason why so many wannabe entrepreneurs give up is that they start to realize they are only trained for one out of the 5 levels. For example, a creative artist may only be formally trained at product design. An attorney may only be formally trained for the legal level of a business. An engineer may be formally trained for products or systems, but not the other levels. A person with a sales and marketing degree may only be trained for the communications level. And an accountant may only be prepared for the cash flow level. When wannabe entrepreneurs look at the 5 levels, they often realize they have more homework to do before their hot new product makes them rich. Self-employed professionals. Highly educated professional people often have a higher rate of success because their education often prepares them for more than one element. For example, consider an attorney's business in terms of the BI triangle. Product. The attorney is the product. You hire attorneys for the services they have been trained to perform. Legal. Attorneys are licensed, which protects them from non-licensed competitors. Generally, agreements are in place defining the rights and duties of the members of the law firm and their relative compensations. In addition, most lawyers enter into engagement agreements, letters, to define their relationship with their clients. Systems. Lawyers are trained to establish business systems for performing services and for invoicing and collecting payment for those services. Systems for leveraging the expertise of more experienced attorneys are tried and true within the legal profession. For example, to provide for efficient and cost-effective legal research, less experienced, less expensive attorneys will do the initial research to find applicable case law on an issue, which is then provided to a more experienced attorney for analysis. Commercially available software packages are often used to implement billing and collection systems. Communications. Attorneys understand that to be successful, they need to maintain a good reputation and a good relationship with their clients. Most law firms market through word of mouth, although some are now resorting to advertising. Most people have an understanding of what an attorney does, which means they need to communicate less or explain less. Cash flow. People expect to pay for an attorney's services. However, this does not mean an attorney can ignore issues of cash flow. Very often, services are not invoiced until the end of the month during which they are provided, and clients often delay paying attorneys' fees. It is not uncommon for 90 or 120 days to pass from the time an invoice for services is sent out until receipt of payment. In the meantime, the attorney's payroll must be met and bills paid. Again, this is oversimplified, yet it does explain why people such as attorneys, accountants, medical doctors, dentists, plumbers, electricians, truck drivers, cab drivers, and babysitters may have an easier time setting up a business. There is a market in need of their services and willing to pay for their services. For professionals such as school teachers and social workers, the road to becoming highly paid self-employed entrepreneurs may be a little tougher. It can be done, yet it is a sad reality that someone will be more likely to hire and pay money for the services of a self-employed attorney than a self-employed school teacher. One reason why highly educated people such as my poor dad, a school teacher, suffer as entrepreneurs is that their professional education does not prepare them for multiple levels of the BI triangle. Many people, such as firemen, nurses, librarians, or secretaries, are trained to perform essential services, but not the services required by the 5 elements of a business. Before they quit their job, I strongly recommend they do their homework. You do not have to be first. Many people think Thomas Edison was the first person to invent the electric light bulb, which helped him found General Electric. The facts are, he was not the first. Records show that he was actually 23rd on the list of people who invented working light bulbs. So why does history recognize Edison as the inventor, and why did his company become one of the biggest in the world? The answer is found in his life, in the BI triangle, and in the 5 components of a business. Edison was born in 1847. From ages 12 to 15, he worked on the railroad selling snacks and printing his own newspaper. From 15 to 22, he worked for the telegraph company. In 1869, at age 22, he received his first patent. In 1876, he constructed his own laboratory in New Jersey. In 1878, he invented the tinfoil phonograph. In 1879, he invented electric light. In 1882, he installed a complete electrical system in New York City. Communications. Raise money. You may notice that instead of attending school from the ages of 12 to 15, Edison worked in sales. He would go up and down the train selling candy and a newspaper he printed. He was working on the communications level. When I left the Marine Corps in 1974, my rich dad said, "You must get a job in sales. Being able to sell is the basic skill of all entrepreneurs." I went to work for the Xerox Corporation and suffered for 2 years because I was shy and I hated rejection. But by 1977 and 1978, I was consistently in the top 5 of all salespersons. Today, I meet many wannabe entrepreneurs who have a great idea for a new product or new business. The problem for most of them is that they cannot sell, which means they cannot raise money. The inability to raise money may be the #1 reason why most wannabe entrepreneurs give up and go back to their jobs. Cash flow. Develop your ability to sell. If you cannot sell, you cannot be an entrepreneur. If you cannot sell, you cannot raise money. If the thought of sales terrifies you, get a job at a department store and begin there. Or get a job with a company like Xerox that requires that you go around to businesses and knock on doors. As your courage increases, you may want to try a company in network marketing or direct sales that is willing to train you. An entrepreneur raises money from friends and family, banks and organizations that support entrepreneurs, customers, suppliers, investors, public markets. I have read books about Edison that say his ability to sell allowed him to have a constant stream of venture capital flowing into his projects. They say he was ahead of his time in understanding and integrating the concepts of self-promotion. His ability to self-promote is one of the reasons he was credited for being the first to invent the electric light bulb when, In reality, he was number 23. Cash flow. Develop your ability to sell. Typically, the person who raises the money or puts up the money to start the business owns the lion's share of the business. So learn how to sell and keep learning. For me, learning to sell was much like learning to drive race cars. It was my own fear that I had to overcome. I am saddened by the fear in the eyes of people who want to be entrepreneurs but are afraid of selling. Legal. Protect your asset. In 1869, Thomas Edison received his first patent at the age of 22. He was doing his job by legally protecting his asset. Later in this book, I will go into why this step is so important for any entrepreneur. Systems. Control the network. By working for the telegraph company, Thomas Edison learned to understand the power of a system. That is why, when inventing his electric light bulb, he was also designing the electrical system that would power his light bulbs. If he had not worked for the telegraph company, he might not have known the importance of this system. Another word for system is network. That is why the richest people on earth control networks such as television networks, radio networks, gasoline networks, network marketing networks, and distribution networks. A big difference between a small business owner and a big business owner is the comprehension of the importance of a system or a network. Our success at the Rich Dad Company is largely due to network systems. For example, our publisher distributes our books through their network system of booksellers, and our radio shows travel through the airwaves of radio networks. Do your homework. As you can tell, this overly simplifies the importance of making sure that all 5 components of the BI triangle are functioning well. Once again, if one or more of the 5 components is not being done, the business suffers. If an entrepreneur designs a business and forgets one of the 5 elements, the business suffers or even fails. The business succeeds or fails before there is a business. That is why it is important to do your homework, even if it means working for free. As this book goes on, we will further develop the BI triangle. Before you quit your job, it is important to look deeper into each component of the BI triangle. This does not mean you have to be an expert at each level. This does mean that, as an entrepreneur, you do not have just one level. You have 5 levels. So, before quitting your job, spend a little time learning more about each level. Rich Dad's Entrepreneurial Lesson Number 4. Success reveals your failures. Chapter 4. Street Smarts versus School Smarts. Good grades in the real world. If I do well in school, will I do well in the real world? I asked my rich dad. That depends upon what you define as the real world. The BI triangle became more meaningful to me after my poor dad shut down his ice cream franchise. He was in his 50s when he took his early retirement money and life savings and lost it all. Instead of rebounding, which many entrepreneurs do after the loss of a business, my dad seemed to go downhill. Rather than start a new business, he took a job as the head of the teachers union and went after his ex-boss, the governor of Hawaii, demanding better wages and benefits for teachers. Rather than learning from his mistakes and becoming a better entrepreneur, he once again became an employee and an advocate for employee rights. One reason why he did not rebound was because he was out of money. Instead of learning to raise capital for his next business venture, he just took a job. He went back to the world of employees where he felt more comfortable. In effect, he went back to doing what he knew, working for and saving money, rather than learning something new, such as how to raise money. My education continues. Realizing that it was the lack of skill in the communications level that brought my dad down, I applied for a job in sales at IBM and the Xerox Corporation. It was not the paycheck, but the sales training that I was applying for. Rich Dad had told me that if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I had best do my homework at the communications level of the BI triangle. After 2 interviews, it was obvious that IBM was not the company for me, and I am certain they knew that I was not the employee for them. After 5 interviews at Xerox, however, I was on the short list of 10 candidates applying for 4 positions. The final interview was with the Honolulu branch manager. On that day, 6 of the 10 finalists sat outside his office. The other 4 candidates had already been interviewed. At the time of the interview, I was still in the Marine Corps and was dressed in my Marine Corps uniform. Sitting outside the branch manager's office, I nervously surveyed my competition. All of them were younger than I was, fresh out of college, very attractive men and women, and dressed like corporate executives. The Vietnam War was still on and very unpopular in some circles, which meant men in uniform were unpopular in those circles as well. Being off the military base and in downtown Honolulu among civilians was not fun. I had never been spit on, but I was spit at several times. Sitting next to these young people in business attire, I felt really out of place in my Marine Corps uniform, which consisted of a short-sleeved khaki shirt, green slacks, short haircut, and military decorations. Finally, the secretary notified me that the big boss was ready to talk to me. I entered his office and took a seat in front of him. Reaching across the desk to shake my hand, he wasted no time in saying what he had to say. "I've reviewed your file. You come highly recommended by the rest of my staff who interviewed you. They believe you could be a valuable asset to our sales team." With that, I took a deep but quiet breath and waited for the good or the bad news. Although he was saying nice things, I noticed that he had trouble looking at me. His eyes were constantly buried in my file folder. Finally, he looked up and said, "I hate to tell you this, but I am going to be the one who turns you down." Standing, he extended his hand and said, "Thank you for applying." I stood and shook his hand, but my blood was boiling. I wanted to know why. Why was I turned down? Figuring that I had nothing to lose, I asked, "With all due respect, sir, would you mind telling me why you're turning me down? You haven't even given me the courtesy of an interview. Can you give me a specific reason why you're so sure I'm no longer a candidate?" "Now is not the time," said the branch manager. "At this moment, we have 10 excellent applicants and only 4 openings. I wish we had more openings, but we don't. Why not wait a year and reapply? Maybe your chances will be better then. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to continue interviewing the other candidates." Looking directly at him, I said, "Just give me a reason. How can you tell which one of us is better than the other without an interview? Besides, I believe this is a very rude way to treat me. You have me come all the way over here and then do not even have the courtesy to interview me. So just tell me how you can make a decision without an interview. That is all I want to know." "Okay, if you must know, you are the only applicant without an MBA. You only have a bachelor's degree." With that, the branch manager walked to the door to show me out. "Just a minute," I said. "After earning my bachelor's degree from the Merchant Marine Academy, I've spent 5 years in the Marine Corps fighting a war no one wanted to fight. I did not have to go to war because I was sailing for the oil industry. I was employed by Standard Oil, which made me draft exempt, yet I volunteered anyway. And now you are telling me that you are not going to hire me because I didn't go back to college to get my master's degree? I had other things to do. There was a war to fight, and you are telling me that you'd rather hire draft dodgers who went to school?" "That is not what we are here to discuss. We are not here to discuss the war or our political inclinations," said the manager, who was about my age. And yes, I am hiring people who went back to school. The job market is tight. We have many qualified applicants, so we can afford to be choosy. Right now, we are only hiring applicants with MBAs. That is how we are making our decision. Go back, get your MBA, and maybe then we'll talk. So why wasn't I told this earlier? I asked. Why let me go through this process only to tell me now? We make exceptions for exceptional people, said the manager. Even though you do not have a master's degree, our screeners thought you might have other qualities we are looking for. So far, my other managers thought you were good, but not exceptional. At that moment, I decided to become exceptional, or at least memorable. The manager held the door open and once again extended his hand for a weak handshake with a weak smile. Refusing to shake his hand, I asked in a loud voice, "Tell me something. What does a college degree have to do with sales?" With those words, all the other applicants with their MBAs turned their heads and stared at the open door. It shows character. It shows dedication and a high degree of intelligence. So what does a college degree have to do with sales? I repeated. Okay, said the manager. What makes you think you can sell, Mr. Marine? What makes you think you're better qualified to sell than these applicants who have more education than you? Because I have spent 5 years getting a different kind of education, an education you cannot find in school. While these kids were cramming for college exams, I was flying a helicopter into Viet Cong machine gun nests. My education has been in leadership, to bring out the best in my troops even though we were all terrified. Not only have we been trained in classrooms to think under pressure, we have had to think under pressure in actual combat. Most important, I have been trained to think of the mission before I think of myself, to think of my men before I think of myself. These college kids have been trained to merely kiss butt for a higher grade. To my surprise, the branch manager was listening. I had his attention. At that moment, I decided to go for the close. Even though I do not have an MBA, I know I have the guts, the courage, and the ability to think under pressure. I know because I have been tested, not in the classroom, but on the battlefield. I know your job is to beat IBM, just as my job was to beat the Viet Cong. For a year, I have been flying my gunship against the Viet Cong, a competitor far tougher and more determined to win than any IBM sales rep. My training for the past 5 years has allowed me to beat the Viet Cong. That is why, even though I do not have an MBA, my Marine Corps education has prepared me to beat IBM. If you think an MBA program trains these kids to beat IBM on the street, by all means hire them. I have my doubts, but I do not have doubts about me. If I can beat the Viet Cong, I know I can beat an IBM sales rep, even if they have an MBA and I don't. The entire office area was silent. Looking down the row of hopeful applicants, briefcases carefully placed at their sides or on their laps, I could see the MBAs shaking a little. They heard everything I said. Turning to the branch manager, I shook his hand and thanked him for listening. I had said my piece. Smiling, I said, "I think I'll go work for your competitor." "Just a minute," the branch manager said softly. "Please step back into my office. I do have the power to make an exception in spite of our current hiring policy." Nothing to lose. After being hired, I went to Rich Dad's office to tell him the news. I also told him what I said once I heard I was not going to be hired. He smiled and said, "Sometimes we win the most when we have nothing to lose." He also said, "The hard part for most people is getting to nothing. Most people would rather hang on to a little than let go and get to nothing." 4 years of misery. Learning to sell was much harder for me than learning to fly. In fact, there were many days I wished I were back in Vietnam flying against Viet Cong machine gun nests instead of being on the streets of Honolulu knocking on doors. Basically, I am a very shy person. Even today, parties and social events are painful for me. So, knocking on the doors of strangers was a terrifying daily experience. For 2 years, I was the worst salesperson on the Xerox sales team. Every time I saw the branch manager in the hallway, I was embarrassed. I saw him. I remembered the Vietnam hero speech I gave to get the job. At my semi-annual reviews, my branch manager always reminded me that he had hired me on faith and how his faith in me was slipping. Finally, on the verge of being fired, I called Rich Dad and asked for a meeting. Over lunch, I explained to him that I was failing. My sales numbers were down, my income was down, and I was always at the bottom of the list of salespeople. What do you think my problem is? You're not failing fast enough. Rich Dad laughed his usual laugh. His laugh was his way of letting me know that I was okay and just stuck in the learning process. How many cold calls do you make a day? He asked. 3 or 4 on a good day, I replied. Most of the time, I am doing busy work at the office or hiding in some coffee shop, working up the courage to go knock on another door. I hate making cold sales calls. I hate rejection. I do not know anyone who likes rejection or making cold calls, said Rich Dad. Yet I do know people who have learned to overcome their fear of rejection and the fear of making cold calls. They became very successful people in spite of their fears. So how can I stop failing? I asked. Again, Rich Dad laughed and said, the way to stop failing is to fail faster. Fail faster? I whined. Are you kidding me? Why would I want to fail faster? If you don't fail faster, you'll fail anyway, smiled Rich Dad. Look, you're in the middle of a learning process. The process requires that you make many mistakes and learn from those mistakes. The faster you make mistakes, the faster you get through the process and get to the other side. Or you can quit. Then the process spits you out. Rich Dad was saying the same thing Thomas Edison had said about failing 1,000 times before inventing the electric light bulb. Rich Dad was saying the same thing my driving instructor was saying to me when I was learning how to drive a race car at high speed. They were saying that if I wanted to get through the process faster, I had to be willing to fail faster. Failing at failing faster. For a few weeks, I took Rich Dad's advice to heart and did my best to make more cold calls. I knocked on door after door at high speed. The problem was, I was still not getting in front of the person I needed to talk to. Their secretaries were very skilled at keeping pesky salespeople like me away from their bosses. Now that I was failing at failing faster, I called Rich Dad again and asked for advice. I called him because I realized I was even failing at failing. Again, he laughed and said, keep your daytime job and find a sales job at night, but find a sales job that will let you fail faster. Naturally, I whined and complained. I didn't want to work at night. I was single, and this was Hawaii. I wanted to be at the Waikiki nightclubs. I did not want to be selling at night. After listening to me moan and complain, Rich Dad simply asked, how badly do you want to be an entrepreneur? The number one skill of an entrepreneur is their ability to sell. If you do not get through this part of the process, you'll be better off as an employee. It's your life. It's your future. It's your choice. You can fail now, or you can fail later. It was an old lesson. I had listened to the same lesson before. The subject changed. This time, it was the subject of sales. But the lesson was always the same. The lesson was that if I wanted to succeed, I had to be willing to fail. With my own dad's business failure still fresh in my mind, I knew this lesson about sales was especially important. I knew that if I wanted to become an entrepreneur in the B quadrant, I had to learn to sell. But I hated knocking on doors. I dreaded it, day in and day out. One day, after hearing 4 replies of, "We're not interested," and one, "If you do not get out of my office, I'll call the cops," I hit the depths of depression. I went home rather than back to the office. Sitting in my little apartment in Waikiki, I contemplated quitting. I even considered going back to school and getting my law degree. But I lay down, took a couple of aspirin, and that idea soon passed. It was time to fail faster in a new way. Working for free. Rather than find a job at night, I remembered Rich Dad's advice that it was easier to find work if you were willing to work for free. I found a charity that needed people to dial for dollars at night. Leaving my job at Xerox, I would go uptown and dial for dollars from 7 to 9:30 p.m. For 2.5 hours, I failed as fast as I could over the phone. Instead of making only 3 to 7 sales calls during the day, I was sometimes making over 20 sales calls in 2.5 hours at night. My rejection rate and failure rate went up. But curiously, as my failure rate went up, so did my success in raising money. The more calls I made, the better I became at handling the rejections. I learned what worked with the calls that succeeded and started changing my pitch based on the rejections and the successes. The faster I failed at night for charity, the more I succeeded at Xerox by day. Soon, I was climbing up the list of salespeople rather than being at the bottom of the list. Even though I was not being paid at night, my income by day was going up. Working those extra hours even had an impact on my fun hours. The higher the number of rejections at the charity, the more fun I had in the nightclubs of Waikiki. Suddenly, I was not as afraid to talk to the pretty women in the clubs. I was less awkward, less terrified about being rejected. Soon, I was even becoming cool and popular, and women were actually hanging around me. After 4 years at an all-male military school and then years in the Marine Corps, being around so many pretty women was quite a treat. It was a lot better than being the lonely nerd at the end of the bar, staring at the pretty women from a distance. From 10 p.m. to 1 in the morning, I was the disco duck, just like John Travolta in the movie Saturday Night Fever. I even had a white suit, long-collared shirts, disco boots on my feet, and shells around my neck. Everywhere I went, I walked to the sounds playing in my head of the Bee Gees song, "Staying Alive." My hours were ridiculous, and I am sure I looked ridiculous, but it worked. I was failing fast and doing my homework at the communications level of the BI triangle. Failing pays off. In my 3rd and 4th years at Xerox, instead of being at the bottom of the sales pack, I was at the top of the pack. I was also making a lot of money. My failing was paying off. In the 4th year, I was consistently number 1 in sales. Once I made it to the top, I knew it was time to move on. My school days in sales were over. It was time to learn something new. But little did I know that my success in sales was setting me up for the biggest business failure of my life. The 4 business schools. Rich Dad explained to his son and me that there are 4 different types of business schools. They are 1. Traditional business schools. These schools are located at accredited colleges and universities and offer degreed programs, such as an MBA program. 2. Family business schools. Many family businesses, such as my Rich Dad's business, are great places to get a business education, if you are a member of the family. 3. Corporate business schools. Many businesses offer intern programs for promising young students. After graduation, the company hires and then guides their career development. In many cases, the company will pay the tuition and even allow time off for further study. After receiving a formal education, Promising employees are often rotated through different divisions of the company so they can see the entire business and get hands-on experience. 4. Business schools of the street. This is the school that entrepreneurs attend when they leave the security blanket of school, family, or the corporate world. This is the school where your street smarts are developed. Going to school. All 4 schools have their merits, their strengths, and their weaknesses. I am not here to say that one is better than the other. In my life, I have been fortunate enough to attend all 4 in one way or another. A traditional business school. While at Xerox, I did attend a local university night school with the intent of receiving my MBA. That lasted less than a year. It was not for me. The instructors were either employees of the school or employees of a corporation. The students, for the most part, were seeking to become high-paid, well-educated employees, just like their instructors. They were looking to climb the corporate ladder, whereas I wanted to build and own corporate ladders. It was a different culture and a different curriculum, so I left. A family business school. My friendship with Mike allowed me to attend a family business school via Rich Dad's Businesses. That was a great school for me, simply because it lasted for years. Rich Dad was not only a successful real-world entrepreneur, but also a great teacher. A corporate business school. Through the Xerox Corporation, I attended one of the best corporate sales training programs in the world. Soon after I was hired in 1974, the company flew me first class from Honolulu to Leesburg, Virginia, to spend 2 weeks at their sales training facility. It was fantastic. After receiving our classroom training, we immediately hit the streets to practice what we learned in the classroom. Our sales managers were great teachers and mentors. They kept us on track with classroom theory applied to real-world challenges found on the street. We studied hard, not only learning sales skills, but also studying our competitors' products and strategies. We had one objective at that time, and that was to beat IBM. They were tough competitors and a worthy opponent, so we knew we had to be up for the challenge. The business school of the streets. But the toughest business school for me was the business school of the streets. Once I left Xerox and hit the streets, I literally hit the streets. The business school of streets was a horrible school, a harsh teacher, and tough on grades. Many times I came face to face with my greatest fears and the depths of personal self-doubt. Yet it was also the best business school for me. It was just what I needed. Instead of A's and B's as grades, street grades are measured in dollars earned or dollars lost. Graduation Day. In 1978, I graduated from the Xerox Corporate Business School and entered the Business School of the Streets. It was an emotionally tough transition for me. I went from the world of flying first class, having nice offices, a steady paycheck, and everything paid for by the company, to a world where I paid for everything, including paperclips, travel, and other people's salaries and benefits. Before I left the corporate business school, I had no idea how much running a business cost. For 2 years, in order to reduce expenses, my 2 partners and I did not take salaries. Once again, I was working for free. I knew then why Rich Dad had insisted that his son and I work for him for free. He was preparing us for the world of entrepreneurship, a world where everyone else gets paid first and you get paid last, if you get paid at all. Success reveals your failures. Another of Rich Dad's lessons was, success reveals your failures. In other words, your strengths will reveal your weaknesses. Again, I did not know what he meant until my own business had become successful. Our nylon surfer wallet business was successful in 2 out of the 5 levels. We were successful at the communications level and the product level. The three partners had trained for years to be successful at those levels. The problem was that we were too well trained at those two levels, and our success was too great too soon. It was like hooking up a plastic garden hose to a fire hydrant. As soon as international success put pressure on the system, the whole business blew. Our strong points blew out through our weak points. Our strengths had revealed our weaknesses. Our success had revealed our failures. We had failed to strengthen the legal, the systems, and the cash flow components of the BI triangle. We had them covered, but we failed to strengthen them as our success increased. Back to the drawing board. After our venture collapsed, two of my partners left the business. I wanted to quit also, but Rich Dad said, "Rebuild the business. It will be the business school you have been waiting for." For the next 6 years, I went back to the drawing board many times. Each failure was less painful, and the recovery was quicker. Each time I failed, I knew what to work on. I knew what I had to study next. The business school of the streets was guiding me. Each failure was actually making me smarter and more confident. Each failure made me less afraid of failing and more excited about learning what I needed to learn next. Each failure was a challenge, the door to the next world. If I was successful, the door to the next world opened. If I failed and the challenge beat me, the door slammed in my face. If the door slammed in my face, it meant I needed to get smarter. I needed to think harder. I needed to use my creativity to find a way to get into the next door. In many ways, it was like being a salesman on the street again, knocking on doors once more. When people ask me how we survived through all those years without money, my answer is, I do not know. I simply took it one day at a time. After my first two partners left and things looked bleakest, two new partners showed up. One of them was my brother, John. They brought in some money, but more important, they brought in a new vitality and new skills. One new partner, Dave, brought experience in the systems level of the business. He was excellent at manufacturing. My brother John came in to handle the cash flow level. He was excellent at keeping our creditors happy and suppliers supplying. We also brought in a new advisor, a retired senior auditor from an accounting firm, to help us straighten out our mess. He was happy to work for free since his wife wanted him out of the house anyway. He was happy to have an office to go to. I also believed he found our struggles entertaining. He would chuckle a lot as my two new partners and I moaned and groaned about our problems. More than work for free and straighten out our mess, he also helped us raise more capital by teaching us how to raise capital in a more professional manner. As I said, we survived by taking it one day at a time. All I knew was that I did not want to go back to a job as my poor dad had done once his ice cream business failed. In many ways, my philosophy was, I had gone too far to turn back. Rich Dad was correct. It was the best 10-year business school I could have attended. I started with a Xerox in 1974 and finally built a successful business by 1984. It was a 10-year process of building, failing, correcting, rebuilding, and failing. For me, it was the best way to learn. Many times, I felt like I was building a race car instead of a business. Our team would work on the business, take it out to the racetrack, step on the gas, blow an engine or hydraulic line, and return to the shop. A system of systems. In many ways, building a business is very much like building a car. A car is a system of systems. A car consists of an electrical system, fuel system, brake system, hydraulic system, and so on. If one of the systems breaks, the car shuts down or becomes unsafe. The human body is also a system of systems. We have the circulatory system, respiratory system, digestive system, skeletal system, and more. If one of the systems breaks, the body may also shut down. In many ways, learning to be an entrepreneur is like going to school to become an auto mechanic or a medical doctor. Just as a medical doctor will look at x-rays or your blood tests, an entrepreneur will look at the BI triangle to assess the overall health and vitality of his or her business. After building and rebuilding my nylon wallet business several times, and building and rebuilding other businesses, analyzing businesses became easier and easier. Today, instead of fear, there is excitement. Today, instead of great risks, I see great opportunities. Today, I know that if I lost everything, I could rebuild it. Going through all 4 of the business schools and gaining school smarts as well as street smarts was a great education. Which is more important? Often I am asked, what is more important for an entrepreneur, school smarts or street smarts? Today, my answer is both. To be a successful entrepreneur, you and your team need to be school smart and street smart. When you look at the BI triangle, you can see why. While all 5 levels require street smarts, the legal and cash flow components really do require a school-trained professional. Obviously, for the legal level, you want an attorney. For the cash flow level, you want an accountant, preferably a CPA. As obvious as this may sound, you would be surprised how many people come to me wanting advice on how to build a business without an accountant or attorney on their team. Team smarts. An entrepreneur needs to know the difference between school smarts and street smarts. More important, an entrepreneur needs to have team smarts, which means finding the best combination of people required by the task at hand. To ultimately win in business, it is team smarts that wins. In Jim Collins' best-selling book, Good to Great, he talks about the importance of having the right people on the bus and in the right seats on the bus. It is also important to get the wrong people off the bus. You need to have a team with the talent necessary for all the elements in the BI triangle. 3 big mistakes. When it comes to legal and accounting professionals, I have noticed 3 basic mistakes entrepreneurs make. 1. They don't have or don't seek proper legal and accounting advice before setting up their business. 2. They listen to their accountant or attorney too much. Many times I have asked the entrepreneur, who is running the business, the accountant, the attorney, or you as the entrepreneur? Always remember, even if they are smarter than you in certain subjects, you are the one who pays their bills. You need to decide the course of your business. 3. They do not have an accountant or an attorney as part of their team. This does not mean you have to employ them full-time. It simply means you need to trust them. They need to know everything and want to know everything. You need to be intimate. Rich Dad used to say, having a part-time accountant or attorney is like having a part-time husband or wife. The difference between school smarts and street smarts. School smarts. A thinker, analytical skills, critical thinker. T thinker, technical skills, expertise. Street smarts. C thinker, creative thinker, flexible logic. P thinker, people skills, leadership. On the left side are characteristics generally associated with school smart people. The right side is generally associated with street smart people. My rich dad said, if you are to develop as an entrepreneur, you will need to develop all 4 areas. I will refer again to these traits, and they should become clearer with each example. For now, I will briefly explain each quadrant. A thinker. We all know people with great analytical skills. They enjoyed solving math problems in school. If you offer a new idea, they will probably be critical or cynical more than open to the new idea. Rather than make a quick decision, they will usually think and analyze the situation for a long period of time before deciding. Before making a decision, they will come back to you and ask for more details. C thinker. We all know people who are creative artists in their work. This does not mean they are artists who paint. It's just that they are creative. They could be accountants or attorneys. They like to see the big picture. They think outside the box. C thinkers often drive A thinkers crazy. Flexible logic means they are flexible in what makes sense to them. For example, when I say I can make more money when the market is crashing, C thinkers may be better able to grasp that logic than A thinkers. In other words, C thinkers can take something illogical and make it fit their logic. They are more open-minded. A thinkers often just reject anything that does not fit their way of thinking. T thinker. We all know people who are technical wizards. They may be computer wizards who speak a language found only on Mars. Or they may be motorheads who think everyone knows how to drop a transmission and fix it. T thinkers are often the exact opposite of P thinkers. Why? Because T thinkers seem to be most comfortable with people who enjoy the same technical subject they do. They attend computer conventions just to meet other computer geeks. They hang out in auto parts stores just to meet someone they can talk to. P thinker. In high school, the strongest P thinkers often ran for student body officer or were voted most popular. Unlike the T thinker, P thinkers can start a conversation with anyone. At a party, P thinkers are the stars. Everyone invites them to their parties because they make the party fun. In business, the staff and employees love this person. They will do anything for a P thinker. In business, P thinkers can make great leaders if they also possess the necessary business skills. When they speak, people listen. Different thinker, different entrepreneur. As you may have already guessed, each different type of thinker will be attracted to different types of entrepreneurial businesses. For example, a T thinker motorhead may enjoy opening an auto parts store. An A thinker lawyer may like opening a law practice. A C thinking medical doctor may want to become a cosmetic surgeon. And P thinkers may become perpetual politicians, always running for office. They may also become pastors, ministering to their flock, or they may become entertainers, getting paid to be the center of attention. All four are important. Rich Dad said, all four types of thinkers are important for a business. Small businesses stay small or fail because they lack one or more of the different types of thinkers. One of the reasons why my nylon surfer wallet business failed was that we were too strong in the C and P categories and very weak in the A and T categories. Many self-employed entrepreneurs are very strong in the A or T category. A person may be a great lawyer in the A category or a great electrician in the T category. These people are very smart experts in one market niche and do best on their own. They may struggle to grow because they are weak in the C or P category. In the world of investing, an A or T person will invest differently from a C or P person. A and T people want a precise formula to follow. They want to see the numbers and analyze them repeatedly. C or P investors are more interested in exotic deals or want to know who the other players are in the deal. Notice the word player, which means people are important in the investment equation. This is important for P thinkers. When I give my classes on investing, I will often have a group of people ask, Tell me what to do. What is the formula you followed? When I hear such questions, I know they are probably A or T thinkers. It drives them crazy when I say, we just created the investment. We got together with a group of people and put the deal together and made a lot of money. It drives them crazy because our way of investing does not fit their logic system. It is easy for A and T thinkers to follow a formula such as save money, get out of debt, invest for the long term, and diversify. This formula soothes their need for a logical formula for investing, even though it is not the greatest investment formula. They may get frustrated with my formulas since they may not have minds that allow flexible logic. Rich Dad's advice. Rich Dad was concerned about my becoming an entrepreneur because I was weak in all four categories. I was not strong as an A, T, P, or C thinker. He said, you have to find one category and become good at it. On a legal tablet, he wrote down the 5 elements of the BI triangle. 1. Product. 2. Legal. 3. Systems. 4. Communications. 5. Cash flow. He then said, I don't think you have a realistic chance in the legal, systems, or cash flow levels of the BI triangle. You have not done well in school, and you probably never will. I don't think you'll ever go back to school and become a lawyer, accountant, or engineer. That leaves the product level and the communications level. Choose one and commit the rest of your life to being the best at that level. And that is how I decided to leave the Marine Corps and work for the Xerox Corporation. In 1974, I decided my best chance for success as an entrepreneur was to be an expert at communicating to people. I was not a natural P thinker, but I decided it was a category I was willing to study for the rest of my life. Today, I have tremendous respect for people with school smarts, people who are creative and can design products, or legal minds who have made the study of law their life, or engineers who are great at systems. I have tremendous respect for smart accountants who know how to keep track of where the cash has been flowing. Become an expert at only one level. When I asked my rich dad why I should become an expert at one level, his reply was, if you want to have the best team around you, you need to be the best at something as well. If you are only mediocre at communications, then you will never need the best attorneys, engineers, designers, or accountants. You will only need mediocre ones because you are mediocre. Build a team of experts. Some self-employed people do not do as well as they could because they feel they have to be experts at all 5 levels. They are often smart and good at all 5 levels, but they may not be strong at all levels. This may be why they often stay in the S quadrant. If you want to be a success in the B quadrant, you need to be the best at one of the levels, and then build a team of experts around you that fill in the rest of the levels. As I overcame my shyness, I would say I became pretty good at sales, marketing, writing, speaking, and creating informational products. If not for years of training at the communication level and developing my P-thinking abilities, I doubt if the Rich Dad Company would have become as successful as it has become. Today, the Rich Dad Company has strong product design teams, aggressive and smart legal teams, and established international distribution systems. It also has marketing communication systems throughout the world and a world-class accounting team that keeps the cash flowing. As a business, we have thousands of people throughout the world working for us or our products. As the old saying goes, the Rich Dad Company was an overnight success, but it took years to get there. Develop yourself. The business school of the streets is a very tough school. I still have memories of walking around New York City, running out of money, knocking on doors, hoping to find someone who would say yes to my nylon wallets. I love New York City, yet I always know that it can be a very cruel city if you are poor, unsuccessful, and unknown. Although the Rich Dad Company's offices are in Arizona, the engines of the business are located in New York City and cities all over the world. It is exciting to have access to the offices of some of the most powerful companies in the world, such as American Express, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fortune, Business Week magazine, Forbes magazine, the New York Times, New York Post, and CNN. It is even more exciting to do, or propose to do, business with them. Yet, as successful as we have become over the last few years, I always remember the streets of New York and how cold the city can become if one of the components of the BI triangle becomes weak. So, before quitting your job, know that your most important job is to develop yourself. If you will dedicate yourself to becoming a great entrepreneur, you will find it easier to find great people to be members of your team. If you can put together a great team, you will find it easier to be successful wherever you are. Just remember, it is very important to strive to be as smart as you can be, both in street smarts and in school smarts. Rich Dad's Entrepreneurial Lesson Number 5. The process is more important than the goal. Chapter 5. Money Talks. We were rich for 6 months, I said. Money was pouring in, and then the roof caved in. Well, at least you were millionaires, even if it was only for 6 months, said Rich Dad, chuckling. Many people will never know what it feels like to be rich. Yes, and now I'm financially ruined, I whined. 6 months of success and years to pay it back. Well, at least you had a taste of the good life, Rich Dad smiled, doing his best to cheer me up. Most people will never know what it feels like to build an international business and be an international success. Most people will never know what it feels like to have money pouring in the door. And most people will never know what it feels like to be an international failure with money pouring out the door, I said, now beginning to laugh. So, why are you laughing? Asked Rich Dad. I don't really know, I replied. I guess I am laughing because, as painful as it is right now, I would not trade this experience for anything. As you said, I caught a glimpse of a different world, a world very few people will ever see, a world I would like to see again. It was all so very exciting for a while. Rich Dad leaned back in his chair. For a long period of time, he seemed to sit there silently reflecting upon his life, the battles won and battles lost. Finally, he came out of his thoughts and said, Most people dash from home to work seeking security from this world. For many, work and home are where they hide from the harsh realities of a competitive world. All they want is a steady paycheck and a place to call home away from home. Rich Dad again paused and then said, and others seek something else. You mean something more than just security and money? I asked. With a wistful look in his eye, Rich Dad said, yes, if all I wanted was a secure job, a steady paycheck, and a home away from home, I would never have become an entrepreneur. And what were you looking for beyond security and money? I asked. A different world, a different way of living. As you know, I came from a very poor family. I wanted more than just a lot of money. I wanted more than just a big house and nice cars. I wanted a life few people ever live. I knew I faced greater chances of failing than succeeding. I knew there would be highs and lows as an entrepreneur. And like everyone else, I was concerned by the highs and lows. Yet, it was the thought of a different level of life that made the risks seem worthwhile. It was not just about making money. It was about a life's adventure. Rich Dad then stopped for a long moment, thinking his private thoughts. Finally continuing, he said, "When my life is over, I already know the highs and lows will become memories of just one great adventure, of deals won and deals lost, friends made and friends lost, and of money made and money lost. It will be memories of total strangers walking in your door just to join you on your next adventure, and walking out your door once the adventure is over. And along the way, hopefully, you find that place, a place with the quality and beauty of life you knew in your heart existed, that you knew in your dreams would come true." "And have you found your place?" I asked. Rich Dad simply nodded and smiled contentedly. A glimpse of your future. With that, there really was not much more to talk about. I knew what I had to do. I had creditors to talk to and a business to repair and rebuild. I still had many things to learn, so I knew it was time to get back to work. Picking up my things, I shook Rich Dad's hand and headed for the door. "One more thing," said Rich Dad. Turning at the door, I asked, "What is that?" "You know those 6 months when you were on top of the world?" "Yes, I do," I replied. "That was a glimpse of your future." "A glimpse?" I repeated. "What do you mean? A glimpse of what future?" "In 1974, when you decided to follow my advice rather than your dad's, you began a journey, a process. The process has a beginning and an ending. It may take years, but it does have an ending. Someday, this struggle you are in will suddenly end, and a new life and new process will begin. You will win if you remain faithful to this process. During this current process, you will be given many more challenges and more lessons to learn. The process is testing you as well as teaching you. If you pass the test and learn the lesson, you get to go on to your next process. If you fail a test and quit rather than retake the test, the process spits you out. So, those 6 months of the good life were giving you a glimpse of your future, a glimpse of the world you seek, a glimpse of a world that awaits you, a glimpse of your future, and a way of saying to you, keep going, you're on the right track. It's giving you a shot of courage to face the process to come and the motivation to keep going and keep learning. "And how do you know this?" I asked. "Did you also receive a glimpse of your future when you needed it?" Once again, Rich Dad simply nodded and grinned. A 10-year process. Rich Dad's lesson on the subject of process has proven to be a very important lesson in my life. Looking back, it seems that my personal processes ran in approximately 10-year cycles, with each 10-year cycle a different process. For example, 1974 to 1984, the learning process. This is the period of time when I was learning the real-world skills of an entrepreneur. Classroom days were over, and the business school of the streets was doing the teaching. I was making many big mistakes simply because I had a lot to learn. During this period of time, I was practicing my entrepreneurial skills, building a company that manufactured nylon wallets in the Far East and marketed them throughout the world. We also designed merchandise products for rock bands such as Duran Duran, Van Halen, Judas Priest, Pink Floyd, and Boy George. At this time, I was learning as much as I could about all the elements of the BI triangle. This was the real-world business school. 1984 to 1994, the earning process. During this period of time, I began to make a lot of money as well as build a foundation of wealth. The lessons learned from the mistakes were paying off in money. Investing that money in real estate gave Kim and me not only a foundation of assets generating passive income, but also more experience as real estate investors. During this period, I was following my passion, which was to teach entrepreneurship and investing. Our company put on courses entitled The Business School for Entrepreneurs and The Business School for Investors. At this point, I was combining my poor dad's profession, teaching, with my rich dad's lessons on business and investing. This was also my time to advance my skills on the communication level of the BI triangle by learning to teach in ways far different than the traditional methods of teaching. As stated in a previous chapter, I had to decide which level I wanted to become an expert at. After learning the basics of all 5 levels, I decided that my best chance of developing my skills was at the communication level. By being the best I could be at this level, I would have a better chance of attracting a higher caliber of team members at the other levels. 1994 to 2004, the giving back process. After Kim and I had enough money to survive on without working, I knew it was time to give back. In selling our education business, I took time to design a business that could teach my rich dad's lessons to more people at lower prices. That was the conception of the Rich Dad Company. Instead of teaching via seminars that at times cost over $5,000 to attend, I decided to create the cash flow game. During this period of time, my focus shifted from making money to asking myself the question, how can I serve more people? Ironically, I have made more money focusing on serving more people than focusing on how to make more money. In 2004, Kim and I decided that we had taken the business to a point where we needed to bring in additional management to take it to the next level, and the business has much further to go. The 10-year cycles were not planned. It just seemed to happen that way. It was only when I looked back over my shoulder that I recognized the 10-year pattern. Today, I live the life I caught a glimpse of in 1978. The process kept its promise to me. The process is more important than the goal. Most of us have heard that it is important to set goals. Yet Rich Dad had a different take on goals. He said, goals are important, but the process of obtaining the goal is far more important than the goal. Explaining, he would say, if you ask most people who wants to be a millionaire, most people would raise their hand. They have a goal of becoming a millionaire, but now they need to choose the process for achieving that goal. There are many ways a person can reach their goal of becoming a millionaire. Different processes to become a millionaire. Rich Dad said, the reason the process is more important than the goal is that the process determines who you become in attaining your goals. Some different processes to become rich are, you can become rich by inheriting money. But most of us know if we stand to inherit money, and finding a rich person willing to adopt you may prove quite difficult. You can become rich by marrying for money. The problem is, we all know who and what you become in the process. It is the oldest profession in the world. You can become rich by being cheap. The problem is, if you become rich by being cheap, at the end of the process, you are still cheap, and the world hates rich, cheap people. In fact, the rich, cheap people of the world give rich people a bad name. You can become rich by being a crook. The problem is, at the end of the process, you are a rich crook with crooked friends. Honest rich people do not like crooked rich people. You can become rich by being lucky. There are many ways to be lucky when getting rich. You can be born with great talent, as many athletes and actors are. You can win the lottery. You can be born rich, or you can just happen to be in the right place at the right time. The problem is, if you lose the money, you have to count on luck to get the money back. You can become rich by becoming a smart entrepreneur. To become a rich entrepreneur, you need to become a smart entrepreneur. The reason I like this process of becoming rich is that the process requires you to become smart, and becoming smart is much more important than making money. If you lose your money, this process will teach you how to get it back and become even smarter in the process. Money does not make you rich. Lottery prizes are often in the millions of dollars simply because there are millions of people who want to become rich by being lucky. I find it interesting that this process of getting rich is not only the riskiest of all methods with the worst odds of winning, but it is a process that does not increase your financial intelligence at all. In fact, winning the lottery often reveals how low a person's financial intelligence really is. The following are stories about people who used the process of luck to become millionaires.